Today, we're locking ourselves inside a sweltering jury room to break down one of the most intense dramas about justice ever written. It's the ultimate story of one man against 11, with a teenager's life hanging in the balance. So let's see how it all unfolds.
Everything, and I mean everything, in this story hinges on this one single instruction from the judge. See, it's not up to the jury to prove the defendant is innocent. Nope. The prosecution has to prove he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So if there's any crack in their story, any plausible alternative, the jury must acquit. And that phrase, reasonable doubt, well, that's the weapon that's about to take this entire case apart.
All right, so the door is locked. The foreman calls for a quick vote just to see where everyone stands. And bam, it looks like this is going to be over in minutes. 11 hands immediately shoot up for guilty. Only one man keeps his hand down. You can just feel the pressure in that room, can't you? It's 11 against 1.
Now, here's the crucial thing about our lone dissenter, Juror 8. He doesn't say the boy is innocent. He just says, I don't know. His argument is actually pretty simple. A man's life is on the line here. This is a capital case. Shouldn't they at least, talk about it for an hour? He's not making a declaration of innocence. He's making a plea for deliberation.
Okay, first up, a crack in the case, starting with the unique weapon. This is where the prosecution's seemingly perfect case starts to unravel. And the first domino to fall, it's their star piece of evidence.
So the prosecution's argument on this looks totally airtight. The defendant admitted he bought this very specific, unusual-looking switchblade on the night of the murder. The storekeeper even testified he'd never seen another one quite like it. And the kid's alibi? He claims he lost it through a hole in his pocket. I mean, it sounds pretty flimsy, right? A ridiculous excuse.
And then we get this incredible, dramatic moment. Juror 8 reaches into his own pocket and slams an identical knife down onto the table. Stabs it right into the wood. He bought it at a junk shop just around the kid's house. Suddenly, the unique weapon isn't so unique at all. It might be an incredible coincidence, but it's possible another knife was used. And that little bit of possibility, that's the very first seed of reasonable doubt.
After this reveal, Juror 8 proposes a secret ballot. He says if all 11 still vote guilty, he'll give in. But one person changes their vote. It's Juror 9, the old man. And his reason is just profound. He doesn't say he's convinced the boy is innocent. He says he respects Juror 8's courage for standing alone. He felt that courage deserved to be heard. And this is that first crack in the wall of certainty, right here. The vote is now 10-2. Juror 8 isn't alone anymore, which means the discussion is officially on. The entire dynamic in the room has just shifted permanently.
Let's move on to questioning the witnesses, what was really seen and heard. With the physical evidence now shaky, the focus shifts to the two key witnesses whose testimony seemed to absolutely seal the boy's fate.
First up, there's an old man living downstairs. He swore he heard the boy yell, "I'm going to kill you." Then, a second later, a body hitting the floor. But there's a big problem. His apartment is right next to the elevated train tracks. Juror 8 points out that the noise from a passing train is absolutely deafening. So how could the man have possibly heard that specific phrase over that incredible roar?
And beyond what he heard, there's what he saw. The man swore that after hearing the body fall, he got to his front door in time to see the boy running away. But let's look at the path. He had to get out of bed, walk across his room, and then move down a pretty long hall. For an elderly man who walks with two canes, that journey raises a pretty serious question.
The witness swore under oath that he did all of that in just 15 seconds. So, is that really possible? This leads to one of the most famous moments in the play. Juror 8 decides to reenact it right there in the jury room. He maps it out and gets another juror to time him. Can it be done?
Nope, not even close. The experiment takes a full 31 seconds, more than double the time the witness swore to. The jurors finally realize the old man couldn't have seen what he claimed to see. He likely just heard a commotion, assumed it was the boy, and then convinced himself he saw it all just to feel important. And with that, another pillar of the case just collapses.
So here, a juror's own background becomes critical. Juror 5, who grew up seeing knife fights, points out a technical flaw. The victim was stabbed with a downward motion, but he knows that any experienced switchblade user, like the boy was supposed to be, would use a quick, underhanded motion. It's faster, it's more efficient. The wound just seems amateurish for someone who's supposedly an expert. With all of these doubts just piling up one after another, they take another vote. And the result is kind of shocking. The jury is now split right down the middle, 6-6. What started as a nearly unanimous conviction is now a complete deadlock. The momentum has totally shifted. Now for our next section, when prejudice speaks, the human factor. Because as the logical arguments for guilt start to crumble, the ugly, emotional reasons come bubbling to the surface. It becomes clear that for some of these guys, this was never about the facts to begin with. At this point, Juror 10 just completely erupts in this furious, bigoted tirade. He claims that those people, and he means people from the slums, are all basically born liars and killers. He completely exposes his vote as being based entirely on his prejudice against the defendant's background, not on any of the evidence presented.
And this is such a powerful, unifying moment. As Juror 10 is just spewing this hatred, the other jurors, and even the ones who still vote guilty, they get up one by one and silently turn their backs on him. They just refuse to listen. It's this amazing collective rejection of prejudice as a valid reason for a verdict. All right, we're at the final act. The meaning of doubt, the final reversal. The tide has definitely turned. There are only a few holdouts left, and now the group focuses on the very last and maybe most convincing piece of evidence that still stands.
So the final real obstacle is Juror 4. He's been the logical, dispassionate one this whole time. And he says that for him, the single most unshakable piece of testimony is from the woman across the street. She swore she actually saw the murder happen through her window.
And then you get this final, brilliant observation. Juror 9, the old man, remembers a tiny detail. When the woman testified, she had those little indentations on the sides of her nose. You know, the kind you get from wearing glasses all the time. But the witness said she was tossing and turning in bed when she glanced out the window. So the question is, would anyone really wear their glasses to bed?
And the conclusion is just inescapable. She almost certainly wasn't wearing her glasses. So at best, all she saw was a blur through the windows of a passing train. She assumed it was the boy, but there's no way she could have seen it clearly. And just like that, the final piece of unshakable evidence is completely destroyed. Reasonable doubt is now, well, it's overwhelming.
One by one, the last few votes flipped to not guilty. And now we're at 11-1, a perfect reversal of that very first vote. Only Juror 3, the most aggressive and angry of them all, is left. All his arguments have been dismantled, and it's painfully clear his rage is really about personal issues with his own estranged son. In the end, even Juror 3 breaks down. The verdict is unanimous, not guilty. So the story starts with 11 men ready to convict, and just one man asking them to talk. And it ends by posing this incredible question to all of us. What does it take to stand alone against the crowd? Not because you have all the answers, but simply to ask the right questions.